I just realized I sound too much like Jar Jar Binks. Then I get a chubby.
Welcome to the Nate the Bullet podcast, show number 4, January 8th, 2017, at Nate the Bullet on Twitter, Facebook page, YouTube, iTunes. The email is info@natethebullet.com. Nate the Bullet is me, Wayne Roberts, and Jared Sue in the edit room and terrified of microphones. This show is unofficially sponsored by MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. They don't have a clue I just said that. Just want you to know who they are. MAPS.org. They do a lot of fantastic work right now. They're mainly known for their very successful studies using MDMA for people with PTSD, but they also work with Ibogaine and psilocybin and other things. My friend Claire, who has an Ibogaine clinic in Mexico, her second clinic, she's connected with them, along with Gita, which is an Ibogaine association. Ibogaine is, if I've never explained that, if you look that stuff up, pretty intense. It's another natural psychedelic, comes from Africa, comes from the root bark of the iboga plant. And if you read testimonials from people who have done Ibogaine and done the flood dose with the visions, if it doesn't remind you of A Christmas Carol, I'd be surprised. Tells you A Christmas Carol was a psychedelic trip. Very similar to, if you saw The Force Awakens, when Rey touches the lightsaber and has all those visions, and one of them is her as a little girl, and she's standing there looking at it, going back to that moment and staring, but invisible, and seeing it happen. Having her dainty little hand stuck in that big fat hand of Unger Plot. Ugh. Anyway, it's really intense stuff, and Ibogaine is used mainly for opiate addicts because it it knocks away the cravings and withdrawals by 80 to 90%, which is a big boost to help get off that stuff. But then there's a lot of work after that. It's not a magic bullet, but it is a great help. When I did Ibogaine, when I went to her first clinic, which she had been asking me to come to and do it for spiritual reasons. I finally did it in 2009, but I couldn't do the flood dose. They do all kinds of work on you to make sure everything's okay, because Ibogaine can kill you. You do not fuck with Ibogaine. You don't fuck with any of them. Do your homework and do them right if you're going to mess with any of this stuff. The more you hold it sacred, the more you will get out of it. And I know that personally. Now, I used to scoff at something like that, but no longer, sir. But I did it for spiritual reasons and couldn't do the flood dose because they have you hooked up and they give you a test dose first to see if you're allergic, and also to see what that test dose does to you. For me, unfortunately, I wasn't allergic, but it did lower my blood pressure, and if I'd had more, it would lower my blood pressure to dangerous levels. So we said, can't do it. And I was not happy. I'd been getting ready for this for so long. But luckily, she said, here's the thing that's cool. For people like you that can't do the flood dose, and there's a lot of you, if you do the test dose every day, to the flood dose, if you're able to do that, it still has the same benefits. And because I had set aside some time to recover, she's like, you want to do it for 3-4 days? But you'll feel nauseous all the time. You'll have to have an IV. You'll see trails constantly. And I went, let's do it. I ain't got nothing else to do here. So I did, and man, no appetite whatsoever. And at one point, I got a little bit hungry, and her sister said, "You want me to make you a smoothie?" And I said, "Please." And I sat there and watched her make this gorgeous smoothie. One of the most beautiful smoothies I have ever seen. And I thought I was going to inhale that thing. And she slides it over when she's done. "Here's a straw." I took one sip out of that straw and it felt like I ate a fucking horse. "I'm done, that's enough." Which she was just fine with because she kind of knew. So she was really just making it for herself. Women. Anyway, what else happened there? During that time was when I truly fell in love with Doug Stanhope, the comic. Not total love, but not sexy love, but brotherly. Because we were in Mexico and in a certain spot where cable wasn't very good. There was nothing on TV, and they didn't have many DVDs that were good. They had 2 that I could find that were decent. 1 disc from the 2nd season of Curb Your Enthusiasm and Doug Stanhope's No Refunds. And I've heard of this guy. He did the last season of The Man Show with Rogan. And I think I've seen a little bit of stuff here and there, but I'm going to check this out. It's one of my favorite comedy specials of all time. No Refunds. Check it out for free on YouTube if you want. It is fantastic. It's old, an oldie but a goodie. Can't believe it's 10 years old now. Anyway, Claire's website, PangeaBiomedics.com, PANGEA Biomedics.com. If you know any opiate addicts that might want to use Ibogaine, or if you want it, spiritual reasons. But I got to take a break right now, so...
It's 7 after. Time for the continuing adventures of 2 minutes of dishes and Cannabis Story Time with Kitty Cat. Rudolph the pilot had a very special touch when rolling a blunt. It was as if his rolling skills made everyone else see everything in a clearer perspective. His special strain that he had cultivated years ago was probably more the culprit in putting smiles on the rest of the Pink Ladies' faces. Speaking of ladies, we should probably get to introducing that part of the team. Laverne was a bit of a tomboy and wasn't into taking much shit. She grew up in a house of 3 girls and 3 boys and always leaned toward playing with her brothers and getting into trouble. So, from them and their quasi-torture, she had a mouth that could get her into even more trouble. She was Mal's oldest friend, but their relationship was never romantic. Mal was more like another brother from another mother. Laverne was secretly in love with Rudolph the pilot. At least she thought it was secret. Thanks to their large consumption of recreational and medicinal cannabis, the group could see it in her eyes, except for Rudolph, as he was blind. All this time, you probably thought he drove the mosquito. Nope, he was actually the doctor of the bunch. And he always just seemed to know where to go and where to point the team. But back to the females of the group. Then there was Mrs. C. She did a fantastic job of keeping things in order for a group of 9 people living out of a van. Mrs. C was almost as good as Rudolph the pilot when it came to rolling blunts. She was Jesse to his Walter White. And whether it was her or Rudolph rolling them, she was sure to have everything ready and laid out.
And the further adventures of 2 minutes of Cannabis Story Time doing the dishes with Kitty Cat will continue in show number 6. Can't wait to see where that's going, can you? Anyway, I wanted to spit out also that MAPS is actually sponsoring comedian Shane Moss's A Good Trip 80 City Tour, which is almost over. There's only a few shows left. It's over an hour of comedy about psychedelics. He doesn't know who the fuck I am, doesn't know I'm saying this, but I like his comedy and his podcast. Here We Are is what it's called. ShaneMoss.com, MAUSS. I hope to see A Good Trip. I think it's February 1st here in LA at the Largo, at the Coronet. If my foot will allow. I'm having surgery February 15th, but I'm not allowed to do too much, and I don't know by the 1st, I don't know what it'll feel like. But along those lines, I heard Shane in an interview talking about his insurance doctor horror story when he broke both of his feet. And then he said the insurance that he had when I think it was Rogan, asked him, "What insurance do you have?" And I'm thinking, oh, don't say it. Don't say it. And then he said the same one I have and went, holy shit. This guy's my long-lost brother. Or at least cousin. Or not. Anyway, check him out. Really smart, funny guy, and Maps is sponsoring that tour. A good trip. Like I said, only a few shows left right now. Not exactly sure where he is, but I think he's in Indiana at the moment. I don't know. I haven't looked at the website in a while. Because I just know that February 1st we'll be here in L.A. Wow, didn't know this was going to be the Shane Moss break. This half hour is also brought to you by the continued adventures of Dishes and Cannabis Story Time with Kitty Cat, which you just heard. A little book that I'll be reading again every even-numbered show. I found that book. It was at the library at the high school I went to for a little while here in the San Fernando Valley. And, man, we had this hilarious teacher named Mr. Hand. The stories. That guy was funny, witty, and a great teacher. Oh, and then when this other student, Charles Jefferson, he thrashed during a football game, thrashed the other team, Lincoln, we were playing, because Lincoln had trashed his Camaro. I think it was 1982. So Jared likes all the cannabis and psychedelic healing and universal basic income and all that shit I talk about, all the serious stuff, but he thinks I should get more personal and get more into my stories, the real ones, while he hides because he doesn't want people to know his girlfriend is a dominatrix and he likes wearing ball gags. Fine. They'll only hear my dirty laundry and my dirty diary. And your ties to F Society, Jared, that secret is safe too. So why not start with my dad and his influence on my sense of humor? And getting into radio back in 1994 on accident. My dad's sense of humor, I was one of those kids that kind of lucked out where my friends' dads they didn't share the kind of humor that my dad did at an early age. I was 12 and I get mail and it's a box and I'm like, this says Columbia House. Remember the 11 cassettes for a penny? My dad got that for me once, had it sent to me, and I opened it up. What are the cassettes in here? One of the first ones I pull out, Eddie Murphy, Comedian. I was 12 or 13, and he got me Eddie Murphy Comedian album, which is delirious. The HBO special was delirious. Most of the material is the same, but there's like a quarter of it is different. And Comedian is the album, just audio. And then, of course, there was Chicago's Greatest Hits, Doobie Brothers' Greatest Hits, and I can't remember what else, but I was just blown away. Wow, it got me Eddie Murphy Comedian. I used to listen to it in science class. I broke my Walkman and somehow figured it out. I could listen to it real low. And I'd be giggling here and there. And Mr. Mason thought I was laughing at his jokes. Some of his were funny, but not all. So, my dad's humor, he gets me the Comedian. He would have got me a Richard Pryor album if it had been on the list, but I guess it wasn't, because most of my dad's humor, how many times I ain't got no teethers. Get off my goddamn foot. Half the time I was with him, it seemed like I was with Richard Pryor. So at this point, it really seems genius that he went and got me the Eddie Murphy album, because it was the next step, sort of like the, you know what I'm saying? Anyway, a lot of my dad's stuff also was the Grease Man. I didn't realize, I'm like, wait a minute, all these years he was so crazy about this radio show, the guy that was on, that took over on DC 101 after Howard left and went to New York. The Grease Man told many stories, had tons of bits, and it was so fast, his show. And man, you could if you pull up Grease Man bits or Grease Man, the Grease Man, what else you could put in YouTube, but there's actually video from an old, I don't know what year, I think it says 88 on it, where he's actually writing a song. You can see him real time doing it, and then comes back and does it. Yo mama, gotta take a break.
It's 16 past the hour. Time for a 1-minute Facebook scroll in the market. Right from the top of the feed. Sebastian Schmoozing, this guy is hardcore when it comes to this stuff. When it comes to getting rid of money and automating most things and being able to live your life freely. Do you want to work in a factory? No. Do you want to work in an office? No. Do you want to work in a store? No. Do you want to sell anything? No. Do you want to be a performer of any kind? No. You just have an issue with doing anything for money as such, don't you? Yes. That's a good one. Next one. Oh, same. He went on a tear. Question. What do you like about having a job? Answer. Not starving on the street. What do you hate about having a job? Everything else. What do you hate about not having a job? Starving on the street. What do you love about not having a job? Everything else.
Sebastian Schmoozing, that dude is hardcore about a resource-based economy and no more money, and he always pointing out what money does and all this job stuff and people not having access and poverty. Dude is hardcore doing his work for sure. And a lot of good humor. It's not as annoying as some who are real heavy duty with always posting about their shit. But anyway, back to the Grease Man. Yo mama is good enough for me. And then he would actually write he'd write a new song for that, for people that would call up and go, your mama, we're doing this. And so, like I said before, if you look up that YouTube thing, you'll see him actually taking the call off air and recording that's recorded and everything, and then go back to the song. He hangs up with her, and they go back to the song, and he sits there and writes the fucking bit, comes back on the air, and then they sing it all. It's really fun to watch. I never worked with the show that worked that fast except for Phil Hendry. But that's other stories for another day. But my dad with the Grease Man, and I realized, wait a minute. Because all these years I've been telling the story of when people say, well, why did you get into radio? How did you get into radio? And I love going, well, the truth is, it was just to shut my dad up. It's like William Shatner talking about Star Trek. It was on a lark. I was just trying to get him to shut up because he wanted me to go to school for something. And for the longest time, I was in my early 20s, and I didn't know what I wanted to go to school for. I didn't want to waste anybody's money that was going to pay for it, and didn't want to just blow it off. I wanted to be sure. And at that same time also, I had the dream of being a professional bowler and taking my dad's bowling to the next level, to do a little bit more than he had done. And he thought, that's great, but you need something to fall back on, because bowling, the bowler's tour, seriously. And luckily, one day I went, yeah, what the fuck was I thinking? But anyway, went on for a while. I couldn't answer because I didn't know. And then finally one day I said, radio, just to shut him up. And I'm expecting him to laugh and go, what the fuck are you talking about? And he went, cool. So what are you doing about it? And I didn't have an answer. So I just blurted out another thing. Gonna make some calls. I made two phone calls. And that was all it took. But then I realized, wait a minute, that's the story I've been telling. The funny part of just shutting my dad up. And as time went by, I went, wait a minute, he influenced me to get into radio to begin with. How the fuck did you not see that, asshole? Talking about the grease man all the time, talking about Stern, telling the story about when Stern was at DC 101, and my dad was a serviceman for Dictaphone, who had, the original dictation machines. Not we have our phones now, but the little ones, if you remember, doctors had them, and they had the big tape machines that you remember seeing back in the day. DC 101 had those, of course, and he had to go to DC 101 sometimes to fix that stuff. And one time he ran into Howard in the hallway, introduced himself, and then blew it. I'm a big fan, blah, 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 and then ended it with, so the Dictaphone Christmas party is blah, 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 so you should come by. At the time, I went, yeah, what did he say? But now I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what was going through Howard's head when he heard that? Had to have been, 1981 or 82? It's crazy. But all this radio stuff constantly. And it took me a long time to go, wait, my dad not only influenced my humor so much and so much other stuff, but he actually did influence me to get into radio. And he's been paying for it ever since. Another funny part, at the time that I did say, I want to get into radio, and I spit that out, and I knew nothing about radio except for I was a big fan of the morning show there in Florida at the time. The Rona show. Well, a few years later, I actually ended up being part of the Rona show, which was quite the fucking trip. And it was even more of a trip when we went to a Marlins game once, and I brought my dad with me so he could meet the guys and everything. And it happened to be a game where they were doing a promotion. It must have been, I don't know if the movie was coming out or what it was, but they were doing a promotion where they were giving away Cat in the Hat hats, these 3-foot fucking hats, but they were the Marlin colors, teal and black and white, I think it was. My dad wouldn't take his off. So with the Rona show, he actually had a nickname, and boy, was he proud. He was the Cat in the Hat. And he was very proud that my nickname was Batman. So I looked at him with that stupid fucking hat on, and he's drunk, and I went, look, Dad, it's come full circle. It's almost like I'm working with the grease man. Or Howard. And unfortunately, at that point, he had Alzheimer's, so he didn't know what the fuck I was saying. That's not true. He had no idea what I was saying because of that shitty, cheap beer at Joe Robbie Stadium that costs way too fucking much money. Isn't that shit crazy? You know what? It's time to take a break.
Hi, Nate. How are you? This is 1 minute of Rona's mind on the phone off-roading in a Jeep. Those that don't want universal basic income are right. Now listen, it'll destroy the core of America, which is a strong work ethic and family values. It's right there on all the reality shows. Get together with your family, record your craziness, and sell it. It's all about family and selling. So what if you don't have a family? Then sell yourself to one. Or sell yourself online running a batch for all to see. Stop crying about technological unemployment. I'm talking here. It's a conspiracy theory. You're just not working hard enough. Sell yourself, or someone else's self, and stuff. So what if universal basic income was pushed by Martin Luther King Jr. like he had anything worthy to say? This has been a minute of Rona's mind on the phone off-roading in the Jeep. How are you?
So there, can't be accused of not having opposing views on this show, Mr. Poopy Pants. Whoever Mr. Poopy Pants is. Thank you, Rona. I guess we'll hear from her again probably. So my dad, in his influences on me, how's this for one? I'm 7 or 8 years old. We live in Virginia. We have a house it's got a basement, really cool basement. And like I said, my dad worked for a dictaphone, and he had one of those, a bar over towards the corner of the basement where we had a fireplace and a brick wall. It was the whole corner was all brick, and there was one spot that was just flat brick and didn't really make any noise, didn't hurt anything, so I would use it to kick my soccer ball against and practice. While my dad was over at his bar, soldering and doing all kinds of little machine stuff and doing the whole testing, 1, 2, 3 in the machines when he was fixing them. Used to crack me up. Anyway, but he had this lovely little pipe and this big bag of stuff that looked like oregano. And he used to smoke that stuff. And normally didn't have any effect on me. But one time, I'm down there just with the soccer ball, hanging out with my dad. He's doing his thing, and music was on. And there was a nice smoky haze in the room. 8 years old, 7 or 8. And at some point, my mom calls down to me that I got to come up and do something, I don't know, some kind of homework, something in a book. So I go upstairs to that, and I'm doing this in the book, and all I remember is the faces in the book started to kind of come out at me. And I'm going, whoa, and started to freak out. Got my hands over my head going, make it stop. It won't stop. My mother's freaking out going, what the hell is wrong? What are you doing? What's the problem? Make it stop. It won't stop. She had no idea what the fuck was happening. But my dad did at one point. He finally realized, oh shit, that boy got a contact high. He got in a lot of trouble, which set the precedent for me, which was for me to get in a lot of trouble as the years went on. Got it from my dad. He introduced me to cannabis in the strangest way. First time I got high, I was 7 or 8 years old. And strangely enough, not long after that, my parents got divorced. I don't think that was the only reason, but my mother still doesn't care for cannabis, still thinks alcohol is better. But that's what you get from growing up in a small place and staying there. Everybody's more about actually now it's changing. At this point, they've wised up a long time ago. Maine's one of the biggest states for trying to push industrial hemp besides Kentucky and Oregon and Hawaii. Maine's right up there with them. Beautiful stuff. Industrial hemp. But funny thing was, when I finally got high for the first time for real, when I was 14 or 15, it was so powerful and scary at first, and then I went, I know this. And that's when I finally realized I got high back then. That's what happened. All this time, I had no idea what was going on. Why did that happen? Why was I seeing that face? Why was the face continuing to come out? Why wouldn't that stop? I got fucking baked when I was fucking 8 years old. How cool is that? Okay, maybe it's not cool, but it is fucking funny. By the way, at the end of the show, when you hear that, stop looking at me, man, that's a nod to my pops. We're done. See you again, Bullets. Daddy loves you.
Stop looking at me, man.